Today we're going to have some conversation about water cooler talk. What does that mean? Change doesn't happen at the water cooler. What does that mean? What is a water cooler, for goodness sakes, right? We have all this bottled water nowadays. We don't even have water coolers really much often in the workplace. But talk around the water cooler to me means gossip. To me, typically means complaining. So change doesn't happen around the water cooler. And when employees, because we're talking about business here, gather together to complain about something in the office, I think the first distinct thing that I'm going to say, a Susan West quote that you can write down because it is impactful, that people that gossip in the workplace really don't want change. Because if they wanted change, they'd be talking to the person or the people that can affect change. And typically, your gatherers at the water cooler are not change effectors, and there's not anybody in that group that's saying, oh, I'm going to leave this conversation and go talk to the boss. I'm going to leave this conversation and articulate a solution so that we can make change in the workplace. So first and foremost, those of you that do it, know it, and you know who you are, I'm calling you out right now that if you're gossiping at the water cooler, you really don't want change. I don't participate with water cooler talk. And honestly, I really don't tolerate water cooler talk. And how do you, let's talk about this as a boss, handle that when you walk into a room and you know they're all gossiping? A lot of managers, leaders, or just colleagues that aren't in charge but aren't part of the water cooler talkers, right? Just walk by, pretend like they don't notice, they're uncomfortable. Why am I going to be uncomfortable because people are gossiping? There's no reason for me to be uncomfortable about that, but why am I, as a boss, as a leader, or a colleague, going to accept that? I'm not. So oftentimes I deal with it with a smile on my face and I just say, hey, what's everybody chatting about? Anything I can do to help here? And then oftentimes they all kind of slide back into their seats. Every now and then I get somebody willing to tell me what they're talking about. And then I quickly demonstrate what they could do to help get this problem changed. So I think it can be light. I think it can be conversation, but I also think there's a sidebar conversation, like a sub-paragraph to this conversation that sometimes people in our society today have the attitude, well, it's not affecting me. I'm just going to go back to my desk and do my work. So just because this small group is complaining or gossiping, no sweat off my back, right? Not my problem. And I think there's a larger problem in society where we all don't say anything, and we could have long conversations about that. And I will tell you, if you're in the workplace and people, your colleagues, your peers, your subordinates are gossiping, it does infect. See, I didn't say affect. It does infect the workplace. And I do believe that we all have a responsibility to the culture that exists in our workplace. So even as a colleague or a peer, you have an opportunity to say, hey guys, what are we doing about this? How can we help fix it? Who should we tell? Who should we talk to? And I'm not going to be a part of water cooler gossip. So please don't think that just because you're not participating, just because if you're a boss, you're allowing it to go on, you don't want to micromanage, you don't want to get into people's business, you don't want to create chaos. I want you to know, don't think that there's not negative impact that happens by the water cooler gossip and conversation, because negativity begets negativity, right? Creates more negativity. Also, I've said this before, and I'll continue to say this throughout all of my podcasts when appropriate, nothing stands still. No one stands still. So if the culture of your company isn't improving by the conversation, it is diminishing, right? So is the behavior, the actions, the conversations making your company better, making your culture better, or is it diminishing? There's no middle ground on this conversation. So I would suggest, as a leader, as a colleague, as a peer, ignoring it, I'm just going to tell you right now, you're part of the problem as well. How can we fix? How can we solve? What activities can we put in place to make a difference? And really, again, look in the mirror. If you're gossiping, you really don't want change. We have martyrs, right, in our business. We have martyrs in the workplace. We have people that really don't know what they do and what kind of conversation they would have with their peers if they weren't gossiping or talking about other people. Have you ever had a relationship, even I have, where I've caught myself when I'm with that person constantly talking about others? Relationships that are built on the back of negativity about other people, they are not true, genuine relationships. What do you have in common? You should have something more than other people and saying negative things about them in common with your peers, with your colleagues. And if you don't, just go back to your desk and get to work. But I believe it's important that people sit down and ask themselves, what do we want in our workplace? And how can I play a role in change instead of a role in the problem? I also was making a note the other day to myself, when we talk about water cooler talk, oftentimes you don't have anybody that's going to stand up there with a new creative thought-provoking idea that works against the other people in the conversation. So if they say something about so-and-so's dress that just is not appropriate for work, as a rule, nobody in that group's going to look and say, oh, no, I think it's fine. They're going to find something else that's wrong. Well, did you see those shoes, right? Did you see that necklace? Did you see nothing matched? Again, I'm giving a silly example, but oftentimes these conversations, just every person follows in line just to add something negative. Generally speaking, we don't have anybody in the conversation that's going to add something positive, that's going to turn the tide of the conversation to effect change. So it's really important also you ask yourself, why am I constantly being drawn to this group? Why is this group drawn to me? And then let's talk about ourselves. Like, who is it that we're going to be in the room with that's going to expect us to be better, to elevate ourselves, to have good, positive, change impacting conversations? So I think that's part of it as well. But I will tell you this. Somebody asked me the other day, so again, Susan, when this happens as a leader, what do? Oftentimes, as often as possible, I'm the person that just puts a smile on my face, interrupts the conversation and says, hey, what's everybody talking about? How can I help? They get the message just by that. But there have been other times when it's been so evident what they're talking about, I will just address, all right, we want to have a meeting now. Let's have a meeting now. And let's talk about what you all are talking about. The elephant in the room never really works well with me. I'm the person that always wants to talk about the elephant in the room. We're either going to exit the elephant or we're going to have conversation about the elephant and we're going to fix the problem. So you can be direct in the moment. As a leader, you can also say, okay, everybody, let's get back to your desks, right? And then you decide as a leader whether the conversation needs to happen with the group or with individuals to begin to change the dynamic of the group. But don't be part of the problem by talking to maybe one employee about it and then pitting that employee against the other employees. Have the courage of your convictions as a leader to address it, right? And if you're going to address it one at a time, make sure it's one at a time. Make sure everybody gets included. And leaders, you can also be guilty of talking to one of the employees about the problem and then you yourself perpetuating conversation about other employees. Well, Sally, I know you're not the problem. I know it's really Joanne. So I wanted to talk to you about it so you would stop doing water cooler talk. Don't do that, because now what are you doing? You're water cooler talking with one of your employees. So make sure you don't justify negatively talking about other people. What can you do strategically as a leader to impact change? What can you do if you think Sally is just being a follower to coach her to being a leader, to coach her not to participate, to coach her to shut it down without coaching her and creating a barrier between her and the other employees to make her feel like you're siding with her. So as leaders, we can get caught in the trap too. But if we're going to decide that we really believe as a leader that water cooler talk hurts our culture and doesn't help our culture, we have to sit with ourselves, with our mentors, and ask, how are we going to shut this down? Again, casually with a smile, break up the group, more direct in the moment, individually, without being disparaging against other individuals or in a whole group. And there have been plenty of times where I've just said, everybody in the conference room now, we're going to have this conversation. If we don't have courage as leaders, how do we expect our employees to have courage to affect change? We're always mentoring. We're always trying our best to affect change. The other thing is help create good ideas. Well, Sally, did you think that maybe, Sally, how do you think the problem that everybody was gossiping about we can fix? How can we fix? What are your thoughts, Sally? Do you have ideas? Do you have a problem, Sally, in the next meeting if I mentioned that I was aware of the conversation you and I spoke, Sally, and these were your suggestions? And that I lift you up and praise you in front of others and suggest that the whole group come to me with solutions instead of gossiping amongst yourself. So I think it's really important that we address it, again, casually, in the moment, directly, or in a meeting, individually, or as an entire group. But we have got to make sure people understand. And I call them on it and I say, you do not want change. And the look you get from an employee when you say that to them and you see it clicking for them that they know you're right, I have automatically elevated that person and my company to the next level because we're going to make change with this. So again, water cooler talk is not productive. Ignoring it makes you part of the problem. What's that expression? Ignorance is bliss? No, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is ignorance. And for you to pretend like you don't see something that's happening and think it's going to go away or get better, it's not as a leader. So don't be ignorant to it. Don't turn a blind eye to it. Now, also emotionally, when you're bothered, when you're upset as a leader, we've talked a lot about this in my podcast as well. Don't address something when you're emotional about it. So losing your temper, getting emotional, taking it personally. Why are you all excluding me and not talking about me? Remember, you're a leader. You want to deal with the facts. You want to deal with it unemotionally, but you also want to deal with it directly, and you want to deal with it in a way that encourages change. So looking the other way is not an option. Waiting strategically for the right moment when you're level-headed, when you have a plan, is definitely a good solution. Again, I like as often as possible to go with we're going to break this meeting up right now and everybody get back to work. Remember this too. We are managers, we are leaders, and unless these employees are on their break, we're paying them to gossip. So it is okay to say, okay, everybody get back to your seats. We're all on the clock. The company's paying for us. And at some level, and this might seem extreme, but when we are working for a company and we're spending more time gossiping than we are working, at some level, that's stealing from the company. Right? We're taking pay for work we're not doing. And that might sound extreme. And that doesn't mean we all don't stand around for a minute and talk about our Saturday night or talk about our kids or talk about, the new outfit we just bought or that doesn't mean there's no talking at work. But I am saying a company shouldn't pay their employees to gossip about the company or about people in the company. And there's no problem with saying that. And again, I go back to society issues. Society today, in a lot of ways, tells us that we're not allowed to call people out for things, right? But these are things that I believe will elevate and make your company better. So again, the water cooler talk needs to be shut down by the leader, but the leader can teach the employees how not to participate without being disparaging against the other employees. So many lessons here. A short conversation with Susan West on the Reframe to talk about water cooler talk isn't good, but drinking a lot of water is good. Let's drink it to be healthy. Let's make our organizations healthy, and stay tuned for more conversation with me on how to lead a better organization. I trust you got some tidbits and tips from me today. Thank you for watching.